Well, and just as an example of how a person shifts gears, when we first talked about this, I came and talked to you in two capacities. One is for the Art Association and another from the historical standpoint. And that was when we were right in the middle of the Loudon Machinery Company research project, getting the Loudon buildings in the National Register. And I was having ideas about sliding partitions that were on Loudon door track and maybe even replicating a Loudon barn for the theater. Well, that, you know, that's obviously out now. But I think there are little elements of Fairfield history that I think the door track idea, maybe in a more utilitarian setting like the Art Association or the costume room or the set building area or the shop or whatever you're going to call it, I think that would work because, I mean, that's industrial grade stuff, and even if it's 100 years old, it's still very workable. And I think those kinds of details, even in humble places like closets and storage rooms, would give our civic center an integrity and an interest that, I mean, tour groups could come and look at our closet. I mean, you can make your closets literally a tourist destination.
Well, we're going to incorporate as much as we can, but there again, it all comes down to what is practical.
Sure.
And
there's also long-range planning. I mean, there are ideas that I think could be implemented at a later time, or embellishments could be added as time goes on. It doesn't have to all be done at once.
Certainly.
I know that we even talked about the outside and the stone and incorporating some of the stone from this building. It's really interesting, and we don't know if it was quarried from around here or not. I don't think we figured that out.
We haven't figured that out, but it's as everybody knows, it's beautiful stone. And when the building does eventually come down, it's an obvious resource. And so it's something we're looking into, either replicating on the building or around the building.
Or even in the landscaping, perhaps, you know, a little water garden area, walkway, little fence. We want to use it if we can and if it's going to work.
Well, and here again, the landscaper that was hired in 1905 to landscape the Parsons campus, if those plans or references to the specific plantings that he employed could be found, that would be another idea for landscaping. You could do a little miniature recreation of some of his ideas. And my guess that his work would be evocative of Frederick Law Olmsted that did Central Park in New York, the big landscape designer from...
The name sounds very familiar, but...
But my guess that there would be a connection there. That would be an interesting thing to look into. But here again, that thread of history that connects now with what happened, you know, before is always a strong piece of input as far as I'm concerned.
It's a strong reference, and it's something that if we have references, historical references in our building, then it's something that gives the building depth and something people can relate to, and adds to the quality, experiential quality of the building. Something that we're working on doing.
Right.
No, I don't want to run anybody down. There is a neighboring community that has a very nice community facility that I frankly thought was their water treatment plant for many years.
I agree, and it is a wonderful and very well-used facility, but from the outside it does.
And and that's real American, it's real Midwest, it's very practical. You know, you don't want to get real frilly, you just get by with what you can get by with and be glad of it. But I think we need to set our sights a little higher, that something that's not only of functional merit but also has artistic and aesthetic merit, something that will last the test of time. I think that's something we should shoot for. I
agree, and I think that represents a civic center's feelings. And also the placement of where it will be in Fairfield, the surroundings will be considered, right?
Oh, absolutely. Context is a huge issue when you're designing a building, and it can't be necessarily a sore thumb in the fabric of its neighborhood, and so it would draw from the surrounding buildings and situations.
I know that when we were first talking about this, the Civic Center being out in the country or out by the fairgrounds, and you worked up some designs for us, they're totally going to be different.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's when you're dealing with, let's say, a prairie, or compared to an urban situation, not only are you restricted by land, but you can't necessarily put a vertical building out on a prairie because it doesn't look that good. And that's where the prairie style came from. It was vertical, horizontal. And so the design will end up changing accordingly.
So that will be yet to be determined, and to incorporate parts of Barhydt if possible. And that will all be developing in the next several months.
Right.
And that's one of the ironies of the design of this building. I mean, this building was designed to last. It was designed to be evocative of a quaint English country church. It was designed, purposely set at an angle to true north to give it a more picturesque quality. And of course, that's one of the reasons that are being used to justify its demolition, not just because it's in bad shape, because it is in physically bad shape. Although I am fond of saying we rebuilt Dresden after World War II, which was flattened by Allied bombers. So we're not quite in that bad a shape here. But just the fact that we don't have a true east entrance in this building is also in, shall we say, philosophical conflict with the present owners. So even if you do have that connection with history in terms of the building style, it doesn't always hold up under modern scrutiny. I mean, people's tastes change. So
Right. And we do have, when you get into theater, we've got a lot of technical, and you've got all kinds of experts and consultants that will be brought in for sound and for
all sorts of things. The acoustical consultants, along with, specifically for theater, you get into the overall shell design, but when you talk to the acoustical consultants, that's when you really get into the design of the theater, because the performance really happens on the interior, and where the way that the interior volume acts is essential in something and how successful it'll be. And so the consultants are big.
And was it on this tape or the other tape where we talked about the organ not being really appropriate for this space?
I can't remember now, but I have been told in this particular space that it's dead sound.
Yeah, it's sort of hiding back in the apse there, and I don't know how good acoustically that. It doesn't look like the space was designed for sound really, and in using something like this, the design acoustically would have to, if this were to be retrofitted into a new space or a new space designed around it, it would have to be respective of what sound it can produce.
Yeah, because the organ, as I understand it, was not designed for the building. I mean, the building was not designed for an organ of this type. The organ was added later, I'm sure, as a gift. Some of the old references to, let's say the compulsory chapel services that were a part of Parsons' life up until, 1950-something, 56, I think. The faculty would sit on a raised dais facing the students, and the reference was in ornate oak chairs with the most important faculty members in the middle, and then they kind of frittered off to the side in terms of their status in the pecking order, the academic pecking order. Well, obviously those ornate oak chairs aren't there anymore, so my guess is that was more of a ceremonial area rather than designed for an organ. Also, the ceiling is painted white and plastered, and my guess is that it had the beaded wainscoted insert between the ceiling beams, like the ceiling of the nave has.
It looks to me like that's what it was.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a 1960s retrofit. Let's get rid of that old-fashioned stuff and make it clean and modern.
Well, while our camera is focusing up there, let's walk up to the front and see if there are any other things that we've talked about identifying to save